Welcome. My name is Yasmin Kazran. I am a teacher candidate at Brock University, and I will be presenting my action research study. My problem statement. So, since all students must learn the French curriculum at some point of their education journey, I would like to further investigate strategies to differentiate instruction. There's many different students. There's students with exceptionalities as well as English language learners who may require extra support when they're learning a new language. Educators do have knowledge on differentiating instruction for different subjects like math, science, social studies, etc. So I am interested to learn whether differentiating instruction for the French language would differ from other subjects. To add to that, it's really important to take into consideration the different factors that do influence the learning of a language. So I found that these factors could include the motivation to developing vocabulary, listening skills, and self monitoring of learning. Now, looking at my research problem, I found that French as a second language, or even third or fourth language for some students, can come as a challenge. So I think there should be more support in classrooms when teaching the subject. Within the French curriculum, there's expectations within four strands. There's listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Depending on how a teacher decides to organize their long range plans, there could be more or less focus on these strands. So it's important that students who are on IEPs are provided with additional assistance and the support they need when they're learning the curriculum. Differentiating instruction for a second language could differ for French. So I wanted to further my research to investigate if there's any specific successful strategies that we could accommodate and modify lessons for students who require that extra support when learning French. The research question I will be focusing on is how can I design differentiated instruction within the core French immersion, or extended French classroom? So here I have a list of some terminology and vocabulary with the definitions that are important to be familiar with before delving into my research study. And I found these definitions straight off government resources as well as EduGains. So I have my literature summary here for all of the literature I analyzed for my research. I found that Rees and Thiessen's articles discussed using Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, and this was used to better understand students and provide them with the academic content that they can pertain to. No, I found that knowing your students' strengths can better direct your teaching and ability to relate to their personal learning profiles. I also found that Bomber, Ben Fee Brown, and a number of numerous authors that participated in the module, they highlighted that the use of hand gestures and actions can help strengthen oral communication within the classroom. This is especially important for core French students, as they are even less familiar with the language as opposed to students who are in French immersion or extended French. Having that visual cue can definitely better support these language learners. So that was one of the main focuses they found. Another article called Knowing and Responding to Learners in FSL emphasized the importance of including students in their learning. So this you can allow them room for, by doing so, you can allow them room for reflection and metacognition. Students can reflect on their strengths and weaknesses, and they can look at how they may improve these areas by creating their own personal goals. Finally, Horace and Thiessen found another way to include students in the learning, and this was the method they used was called tiering tasks. This can be done by keeping the main key concepts and skills that they learn, but you can provide them different levels of challenges. So the student can actually decide what they want to do based on their readiness. I found that overall these resources provided me with a considerable amount of information regarding my research. All these articles were targeted for the teacher audience. They're very relevant and they're appropriate to use for my action research project. I found that many of the sources shared great detail and content about strategies we could use to differentiate instruction in the language classroom. Now let's take a look at the research action plan I created for a successful study. Now, looking at the data sources, I did go through multiple possibilities that I could use for my research study. However, the ones that I decided I will be using to answer my research question were the teacher focus group, teacher journals, as well as student work samples. I did decide that these data would provide the most insight to my research question because I can draw connections from each source, which does help me find, which will eventually help me find a conclusion to my research question. Using a teacher focus group with 5 participants, I can guide a discussion that's carefully planned, and I'll have questions that are created beforehand that are regarding differentiated instruction within the FSL classroom. So this will help me obtain information using different perspectives from each teacher. As the discussions will be facilitated, I can make anecdotal notes for my personal records. The second data source I chose was teacher journals because I can provide different writing prompts. Or I can even choose the same ones later on, and that way I'll be able to observe any changes or progress in the thoughts or results. Finally, the last data source I chose was student work samples because I think this will tie in well with the teacher reflections that they'll have in their journal logs. I can capture any changes or improvements within the students' work that are reflected through the journals teachers are writing regarding their students' progress. Let's look at how my research study is evidence of triangulation. I created a little image of a just for reference. So I have triangulation in the middle of the image, and I have the 3 data sources I will be using: teacher focus group, teacher journals, and artifacts. So I found that since I am using 3 different data sources to collect my evidence for my question, I can ensure triangulation. I do have a combination of qualitative data, so that was the focus group, journals, as well as artifacts, and as well as quantitative data, so that I will be extracting scores and grades from the student sample work. So this will provide a deeper understanding of my area of research. I'm also able to ensure validity within my data collection because I am using relevant and appropriate resources to gather the information from teachers and students that are within the FSL environment. So this overall will make my validity strong since the data will be suitable as well as pertinent to my research question. Additionally, I can ensure reliability within my evidence collection since I am obtaining data from different teachers and students, which will provide consistency. Within the focus group discussion, I'm able to observe all viewpoints of different teachers. So within the teacher journals and artifacts, I can also make connections between what the teacher is observing in the classroom as well as how it is demonstrated in the student's work. So this is a direct observation that I can find within my data sources. And then in overall, this will provide a timeline of consistent data. Who will be participating in my action research study, as well as where will it take place? The participants that will provide data for my research will be 5 chosen FSL teachers that will either be from the same school or a different school, just to get that more of a different, more broad perspective. I'll have a variety of core French, French immersion, and extended French teachers, so I'm not just focusing on one division of the program. I'll have data coming from each of the 3 types of French language classrooms. The grade levels I will be focusing on are grades 4 to 8. Since my since I do come from the junior intermediate division, I will also have a group of students from each of these teachers' classes that I can observe, which I can observe their projects, assignments, and assessments. And these are coming from the 5 FSL teachers be that will be participating in the action research, so that I can use the reflections directly from their students, from their classrooms that they can observe in their teaching. I will also involve 10 students in total. I'll have 2 students from each classroom and grade level. The data will be collected in the school setting, since this is the most relevant setting for the topic of my research. It is really important to look at the ethical considerations going into a research study. So I did take a look at my research process, and I wanted to take a moment to consider the ethics. I will have to first ask permission from the school board if I am able to conduct this research process in the schools. Once I do have this initial permission, I can then ask teachers who will whether they want to participate, and if they do choose to participate, I will ask them if they want to use their names or if they want to remain confidential. I'll have an agreement form prepared, which will be provided to the teacher participants. Also, I will have to prepare a consent form for students that which they can take home and have signed by their parents. This will consent their participation in this study. Finally, I will be referencing, when I will be referencing or displaying students' work as part of the artifacts for my research, I will remove their real names and I'll use pseudonyms instead, and this way I'll be able to ensure confidentiality. I've created a timeline chart to represent my data collection process. So on the left column, I have the type of data I'll be using, and on the right column, I have how often it will be collected and when. So for the teacher focus group, I will do one focus group at the beginning of the school year, so this will take place in the month of September. For the teacher journals, I will ask for monthly reflections that will be captured at the end of each month. So this will run through the months of September to May. Finally, I have the student work as artifacts that I'll be using. This will be extracted between October and May, and this will be done bi-weekly. To close my presentation, I just wanted to say that since I am a teacher specializing in the instruction of the French language, the design of this action research study has been very important and relevant for me. My research question has always been something that I would inquire about, and it's always been something that's piqued my interest. I know that this study will benefit my overall knowledge of teaching because I'm always looking for different ways to support all students, diverse learners in my classroom. I'm constantly curious to find strategies to differentiate within all strands of the FSL curriculum, so listening, speaking, reading, and writing. We're constantly growing as teachers, and we should continually look at different ways to support diverse learners. Differentiating instruction is an area that is relevant to all subjects in the classroom, and I think that my research will be a solid guide of data for the language of French, but also for all aspects of the language learning experience. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I do hope that you were able to take something beneficial for your teaching practice that you can utilize in your classroom.